Hey guys, Jared Flynn with the BulkLoads podcast. Tyler's in here with me.
What's going on?
I'm going to tell a story. Can I tell a story?
You can.
I think you all were listening. You really don't have a choice. But the other day I was in a room with another insurance company or insurance broker. And he made this comment, and I'm not going to say who it was, but he said, yeah, I actually had to go in the office the other day and do some work. And like he was chuckling about it. And I know he was joking about it, but I almost got kind of upset. I'm like, shouldn't you be in the office working for your clients every day, like serving them? But it was more like he hasn't been in the office forever.
Wow.
And he actually had to go do some work on there. And I say this not to like cause tension, but like it aggravated me. Like, I think everyone, if you're giving someone their business, and like those people need to be serving you.
Yeah.
And I think that's the reason why we started Bulk Insurance Group a couple years ago. Larry and his team have been doing a phenomenal job, but you know, insurance is insurance, but like we want to change the way it's done.
Yeah.
We don't go out and play on golf courses every day and chum it up. Like, we're here working with our customers, trying to figure out the best solutions, the best options, and quite frankly, the best coverage.
Yeah. Yeah, I think from a consumer standpoint, I think personally, I would be how you would feel upset, especially too if you need to make a claim or you get in an accident or something. Like, whenever you call your agent, you don't want them on the golf course or whatever. You want them in the office, calming you down and walking you through the correct steps to whatever action you can take.
Yeah. I hope everyone out there has had good experiences with their company, but if not, we'd love to talk with you. I can go on and on about bad experiences that I've had with insurance, quite frankly. And I think it's fueled myself and our team to really focus on it and provide, exceptional service at the end of the day. So I just want to get that off my chest, by the way.
Yeah.
But anyways.
That's a good story.
Yeah. So, well, to lead into that, today we're going to be talking about insurance, but specifically about work comp. There's a lot of confusion on really what work comp is and whether your trucking company should have work comp on its truckers, whether they're independents or W-2, and really how there's been more and more enforcement to implement work comp, and more importantly, how there could be potential ramifications if there is an accident and your company does not have work comp. So our CEO, Larry Hurt, is going to come on and we're going to dissect this. This was an awesome show for a variety of reasons. But number one, I learned so much more about work comp. We have it here for our company, but our company, we're not out on the road. We're not construction. You know, our work comp is minimal compared to, I think, what other companies have to provide, especially if you're in construction, farming, and some of those other industries.
Yeah. I didn't know what work comp even was before watching this episode. So,
and when work comp kicks in versus other coverages.
Yeah, it clarifies a lot of things. And Larry, he's a younger guy, but man, he's just an expert on this stuff. He knows everything about work comp and just trucking and insurance in general.
Our goal is always to provide good content and keep our audience informed on what's going on. And this is one of those shows. So sit back, listener, or if you're watching, and here is my conversation with Larry Hurt. Larry, thanks for joining today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is my first time in the new studio.
Yeah.
It looks good.
Yeah.
Feels professional.
We're getting there. We're upgrading week by week.
Yeah, this is great.
Well, today we're going to talk about insurance, but specifically work comp insurance. And I selfishly wanted to bring you on because I still don't quite understand it. I know we pay it for bulk loads and bulk insurance. For our company.
Yep.
And I know we offer it to all businesses, trucking companies, agribusinesses, co-ops, any size. But there's some discrepancy on who needs to have work comp and who doesn't. And we're going to talk specifically in trucking and probably get into other businesses.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you've done this for years. You've sold work comp. And again, this isn't a ploy to buy work comp from us, but we're going to really dissect that and go into that. But let's start with the bare bones. What is work comp?
Yeah, absolutely. So workers' compensation is going to protect an employee of a business when they get hurt in the act of fulfilling one of their duties. So we really work comp is meant to respond when a company has an employee that gets hurt on the job. Something unique about work comp is that the benefits are unlimited. So if someone gets hurt in the scope of their job, and maybe they're injured for 30 years, that workers' comp policy pays out for those 30 years.
And let's talk specifically just regular businesses. Let's not talk about trucking, but if I'm a business owner and I have employees that, I mean, they're actually employed by my
Yep.
company, do I have to have work comp for them?
Yeah, so every state's different, right?
Okay.
Workers' compensation is governed by the states. So every state has different work comp laws. For instance, the state of Missouri, right? We're in Missouri. If you have 5 or more W-2 employees in Missouri, you're required by state statute to carry workers' compensation, regardless of what business, whether you're a trucker or
Office, like
in office. Yeah, it doesn't matter, right? You're required by law according to Missouri state statute.
this may sound silly, but how do they know?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's a great question. What you don't want them to find out and know when it's too late.
Yeah. And I'm not saying that, but I'm like, yeah, because there was one thing that as a business owner, as we grew into full-time employees, and this was years ago, I didn't really realize that until someone said, hey, you have enough employees, you need to have work comp, and we ended up getting it.
Yeah, and you hope your insurance guy tells you that, right?
Yeah.
But you know, depending on the business and what type of business you partake in, for instance, you know, if you're in construction, right, you're going to have OSHA guys out there visiting you. If you're in trucking, you're going to have DOT guys out there visiting you. So those maybe more high risk companies will probably be a little more up to date with some of the workers' comp. But your basic, you know, mom and pop office workers that you started out with one employee in their garage, yeah, some of them might not know. So it's important to be informed on it.
Talk about, so as a state statute, and we don't want to get into the details, legalities, but you have to have work comp for so many employees. But if you have them, some people, and we're going to talk about just regular business, but then we're going to talk about trucking, but some people will just hire people as a 1099 or a contractor.
Yeah. Yep.
To kind of out.
Yeah, they'll try to mitigate they'll try to mitigate it. You know, and this is kind of a gray area, I'd say. There's discrepancies in, you know, how you treat employees, even if you pay them as a 1099. You know, let's just talk owner ops real quick. You know, if you're paying an owner operator that's leased onto you as a 1099, but he doesn't have owner operator, I'll say authority. You know, he doesn't ever reject loads. You dispatch for him. He's required to haul for you only. There's some discrepancy, but if you got pulled into a work comp lawsuit, the goal for those attorneys would be to prove that even though you pay him as a 1099, he's really an employee. He acts like an employee. All the job duties are what an employee would do. So there's got to be some segregation, right? If you're paying him as a contractor, there needs to be very outlined ways that they're different than your employee.
So let's dissect that a little bit more, just because I want our listeners and viewers to understand that if I'm an owner operator, I have my own authority, I'm paying my own insurance, but I am hauling dedicated for another company, a dispatch service or another trucking company. They're supplying me with all of my loads. I mean, dedicated. That could fall under.
So that scenario is probably less likely to fall under it. What I'm really referring to is guys that are running under the larger motor carrier's authority.
Okay. Got it.
They're running under somebody else's authority. They're leased onto them. They haul dedicated, but they're leased on with somebody else's DOT number on the door. In the scenario you described, typically, unless they had 5 drivers for them, and depending on what state they were in, you know, some states only takes 1 employee. So depending on the number of drivers, but if they were running under their own authority, they wouldn't probably fall under that category of employee for somebody else.
Yep. And I don't want to scare anybody, but I want to talk about like the truth of what can happen. So if in this scenario, if there was a claim, like walk us through what could be potential liability of a company if they're not paying work comp?
So our goal with every client is to educate them. We can't tell them what coverages to take and what not to take. Our goal is to simply make them aware of any exposure that the owner has to risk. And so in this scenario, we come across it a lot, right? We have a lot of trucking guys, a lot of companies that have grown through adding owner operators. They pay them as a 1099, as a contract worker. They don't necessarily classify them as W-2 employees where they would need workers' comp. And so here's the dilemma, right? What we're seeing is more personal injury attorneys, as we already know.
Yep.
Typically if an attorney's in, trucking accident litigation, he's also probably doing workers' comp litigation.
Oh.
And so a lot of these trucking companies, they need to be aware, because what could happen is if a driver who is leased onto you,
yep,
but you don't have work comp, gets in an accident and it has some big injuries.
Yep.
It could come back. That's typically what we see is, John gets hurt in an accident. You don't hear from John. He's no longer driving for you. But then 2 years later, here comes a lawsuit knocking on your door about, hey, John is wanting to file for workers' comp. And so those are the scenarios. If that case was to go to trial and the jury deemed that motor carrier should have had workers' compensation, they were required by law and they did not purchase it, there could be potential consequences being paid forth out of pocket by that trucking company. So our goal is to make sure, hey, here's the state statute, right? This is what the law says. Unfortunately, more and more owner operators are getting classified as W-2 employees when it really comes down to it. And so that's something, the days of motor carriers saying, hey, I'm paying this guy's a 1099. Well, if he's running under your authority, even if you're paying him as a 1099, when the rubber meets the road in a lawsuit, you're going to have some really definitive separation between an employee and a contractor. So you obviously would want it in writing, the difference between what your W-2 employees do versus the authority that maybe a contractor has.
Talk about, just in broad terms, and it depends on the company and all that, but when we're talking about work comp, I know for our company, I think it's pretty minuscule. I don't even know the cost, honestly. Yeah. But I know we're not outside, we're not construction. These are in-office employees. And so I remember when I saw the premium, I'm like, that's not that much. But obviously for trucking and construction, it may be more than that.
Yeah, agriculture, co-ops.
Co-op. Oh yeah. Absolutely. So you're dealing with machinery and large equipment.
Yeah, you're on a grain elevator somewhere, it could be 2-3 stories up. We talked with a workers' comp market, one of our best markets that was in here yesterday, and we were just kind of talking over some scenarios that they've seen in claims, and specifically in the agriculture sector. They've seen a lot more claims where workers are up second story or getting into a grain bin, right? That's what they don't want to see is guys getting in grain bins. And a lot of that technology has helped us get better at keeping employees safe. But yeah, there's risk. Every job duty has what's called a class code that is associated to that job duty. So for truckers, the class code is 7219. You'll see that all the time. How underwriters calculate premium is they take the class code, multiplied it out. There's a base rate for each class code that's governed by the NCCI, workers' compensation. You'll hear terms like experience modification. But what these underwriters take these class codes, they multiply them out and they give them a base rate. And it says, here's the premium that we're going to charge in order to write the workers' compensation policy. Truckers are very expensive.
Okay.
Like you said us, right? We're in an office. Most people are at a computer. You think of a freight brokerage, most people are at a computer, they're on the phone. Probably not a lot of risk associated with that. However, if you're in a truck, you're constantly getting out in and out of a big truck. We see, every workers' compensation loss control rep, if he ever comes visit you, the first thing he's going to ask is like, do you guys have 3-point contact in a truck? You'll hear that all the time.
What is that?
They're wanting to make sure that you have something to hold.
Oh, a handle on that.
A handle, and then directions on actually stepping onto the step of the truck and actually pulling your body in and making sure you have 3 points of contact in and out of each truck. That's where a lot of claims happen. Maybe it's icy out, driver hops out, slips. You could be in the hospital for 2-3 weeks. So those are the things that worker comp markets are looking for. Workers comp generally has performed really well, where other lines of business, especially trucking, insurance premiums have gone up. It's been a really hard market. Generally speaking, workers compensation has stayed pretty steady. So it is expensive for truckers specifically, but it's nowhere near maybe an auto liability policy.
Can you talk a little bit about, and again, everybody's different, so this isn't a quote specifically, but just in general terms, like how much it would cost per truck on a general. And then I guess my question is too, like there's different types of trucking. Job I had many years ago, we had a lot of flatbed trucks coming in. Well, those guys were having to get up on the flatbed and throw the tarps and all that. And a lot of these guys, you had to be in pretty good shape, but I heard stories of these guys slipping off the trailer, off the flatbed. One guy broke his back, and I mean, just horrific stuff. But the hopper stuff, I don't think would be as bad because, it's more, there's not as much climbing around. There is some climbing and out, but not to that severity. You're not messing with tarps and straps. I mean, are there better rates, I guess, for your bulk guys versus your non-bulk guys?
So all of those drivers are going to be classified under the same class code, regardless if it's a flatbed or a hopper.
Okay, it'd be the same.
So the same class code. However, depending on the state that you're in, I'll use Missouri as an example again. Workers' comp underwriters can either credit your account or debit it 25% either way.
What's that mean?
That means you may get a 25%. The best scenario is you get a 25% credit. So they look at your premium, say it's $100,000, and they're like, we really want this account. It looks really good. It's going to perform well. Let's give them 25% credit. So to get aggressive, to earn your business, maybe they credit it down to $75,000 instead of $100,000. So that's legal to do in the state of Missouri. It's also legal to do the opposite, which is it's at $100,000. We need $25,000. Let's debit it $25,000 more dollars to get the premium that we feel comfortable. So a flatbed operation, maybe that'll calculate out to $100,000, but maybe the underwriter will debit it to get more money into it. Flatbed is generally harder on work comp. That's not a secret. Every underwriter knows it. Yeah. Shoulder problems, right?
Oh yeah.
Doing tarps all the time. You're also maybe getting on top of a commodity that's loaded onto your trailer, chains. All of those scenarios are makes it a little more difficult for flatbeds.
Now, when you say that, that credit and debit, so I mean, is it more regulated? Like there's kind of a set.
Absolutely, workers' comp is fairly regulated by each state. They can't debit it more than the 25%. Yep. They also can't credit it more than the 25%. And so, not to get too far into the weeds, but there's also what's called an experience modification. Every business has an experience modification if their payroll supports it. There's a minimum payroll. However, that is a big piece of what we want to look at as well. Is every underwriter will look at the experience modification. Everybody starts out at a 1. If you perform really well with claims, your experience modification goes down. If you perform poorly, your experience modification goes up. And so that also plays a role in how the calculation is determined on workers' compensation.
Give us I'm just asking for kind of a ballpark. Like if you're 5 trucks and you maybe been paying these guys as 1099s, you haven't been doing work comp, and you're like, I'm listening to this podcast. Maybe I should consider this. We want you to contact us, by the way, but can you give us a base of what typically you're going to be paying in work comp?
Yeah, I would say, 5 trucks, let's just say each employee, you're paying them, $75,000. So your payroll is it's less than $500,000. You're probably looking around somewhere between $10,000 to $20,000 of premium in workers' compensation.
That doesn't sound like that much to me. I mean, it's still a lot, but
I agree with you. It's not going to break the bank. But obviously as your payroll increases, you also have obligation to pay more. So every workers' comp policy is audited at the end of the year. which means you pay actual exposure. So if you add a couple more drivers during the year and they audit you, you'll pay the difference of what you projected. But yeah, I would say anywhere from $10,000 to $20,000 is probably reasonable
So,
in
I
that.
mean, you could say 2 to 4,000 per employee.
Yeah, and the bigger the risk, and depending on the performance, if they've had workers' compensation in the past, all that takes into consideration. But just a general, never had workers' comp before. We now have 5 employees. We're going to get it. I would ballpark it around that $10,000 to $20,000 range.
Talk about someone that does get work comp. You have a trucker slips off the step, breaks his leg. What's the process of filing work comp?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Work comp carriers have gotten really good at providing good service. Our one of our best markets that was in here yesterday actually talked about a program that they have, a nurse triage program for everybody that gets their workers comp through them. So that's a huge benefit, right? I would anybody that we write the work comp for, I'd say take advantage of this. They can actually call a number to the insurance carrier and they will actually get you a nurse on the line immediately.
Oh, wow.
Because as we know, what we don't want is we want to know about the claim right away.
Yep.
We don't want, Joe to go home and then come back a week later and say, oh, my back hurts, right? Well, a lot can happen in that week. And so we want to make sure that, the work comp is paying for what it's intended to pay for, an employee that gets hurt on the job in the course of his duties. So right away, I would file an accident report, right? Whoever's in your HR, probably the owner of a small trucking company, I would fill out a physical copy of the accident report, date, time, what happened.
So companies need to have maybe be thinking about having some kind of report system.
Absolutely.
Like almost, if you haven't thought about that.
Yeah, it's just a one-page document that just, much like an accident report. And if you get in a trucking accident, you're going to want to fill that out, date, time, place, what happened, who's hurt, did they go to the hospital? And then you're going to want to monitor that. And the goal is, if he breaks his leg, what are we going to do? Right. Well, a lot of work comp carriers want a return to work program, and we can help you set this up. What that is we want to get them back to work as soon as possible. Right.
Yeah.
And so we can give them limited duties. We can find ways to keep them in the office. Obviously he's not driving, but let's put him on a phone. Let's teach him how to dispatch. Or maybe there's some other responsibilities in the office that they can do if they're a trucker that gets hurt. But I would say to back up, to answer your question, fill out an accident report. If he goes to the hospital, you're going to want to notify your broker, your agent, or the insurance company right away and let them know the claims details. And then they'll have further instruction on what to do. A lot of times workers comp, if you go to a hospital, a lot of times you'll want to disclose that information. Hey, this was happened. We intend to file it with our workers' comp carrier so that the insurance portion of it and the work comp market can be in contact with the hospital.
Talk about what specifically the work comp, when there is an accident on the job, somebody's injured. Again, let's just use the guy slips out of the truck, breaks his leg. He goes to the hospital. What is work comp covering?
Yeah.
Versus what would the potential employer need to be covering? And then also talk a little bit, just segue into that. You always hear about work comp fraud. Some guy, he wants to get out of work. So he purposely, or some guy hurts his back, doing some stunt at home. Well, then he goes into work and tries to say that it was done at work to file against work comp. But talk about that.
So the first question, right? What is the goal of work comp? It's really two things. It's going to pay loss of wages, so you can no longer perform your duties at your job, right? And maybe you're not going to make as much money because you can't perform a physical duty that you're being compensated for. So it's going to pay the loss of wages.
100% of those lost wages?
That's a good question. Each carrier is a little different. You would want, there's probably a percentile of the lost wage depending on the market. But in some cases it could be 100% depending on the accident. It's also going to pay for the indemnity, right? We're trying to make this employee whole again. So all the medical costs, all the ongoing care. If it's a really bad accident, maybe there's going to be a wheelchair that gets involved. So there's going to be some other outside extra expenses that's going to get covered to ensure some sort of quality of life for that person. So it's going to be the big one is the wages. any medical expense, and then any extra expense maybe that the family will incur, that person will incur.
Okay. Talk about fraud.
Yeah, gosh. Wow. It seems like fraud's just like rampant right now. It's like I'm seeing it everywhere from cyber attacks to double brokering, and then
Let's
obviously
not go down that path.
but work comp
Yeah,
too. Work comp's right there. Like I think work comp's in that mix.
Well, I hate to say it, like over the years, I hear of like even, old friends of mine at home doing more blue collar labor that, oh yeah, he did this over the weekend. Well, then he went in and tried to make it in, like he did it on the job. And I'm like,
Yeah, for people with poor health benefits, right? They're thinking of like, how do I get, first of all, how do I get time off that I get compensated for?
yeah,
And also, how do I get this surgery paid for that I would have to otherwise pay out of pocket? So fraud and work comp happen all the time. A lot of work comp carriers will actually, if they have a fishy claim, maybe they'll do a little investigative research, maybe take some pictures of somebody if they're, they've been at home and they say they can't return to work, but then they got pictures of them taking groceries in from the car. That happens. It's part of it, but it's something to be aware of as an owner of a company.
yeah.
If there's big gaps in resumes of work history and you're interviewing and you're talking about what happened here, I got hurt, and if it starts to be a repeat offender, a lot of times it only takes one employee to blow up your experience modification, and that can be the difference between $20,000 to $50,000 for a small trucking company. And so it's good to vet the people that are working for you, and to understand that each employee could potentially cost you, or they could do really well, right? Each employee could also be really healthy and not get hurt and take safety seriously, and that person should be rewarded for that.
Yeah. And I think this is so valuable, this information right here, talking about it. I mean, especially to protect businesses.
Yeah.
That's what we're talking about. Work comp, we're talking about insurance. We're talking about safeguarding, protecting your company in case of these.
That's the thing.
Emergencies.
People get insurance wrong a lot of times, and they think that our goal is to just, make a lot of money and to, you pay for a promise and then you have a claim and you hope that you get your payout, and, insurance companies are out to get you. And maybe that's a little bit true sometimes. I don't know. But our goal is to be like your CPA or be like your attorney. We want you to call us and be like, hey, what do you think of this scenario? And my goal and our goal, everybody here, is to give owners of companies the best advice so that they can make business decisions on how to mitigate their risk as a company. And so that's really what our goal is just to give really good advice and to be an advocate and be on your side.
Yeah. Well, the last question I got, and we'll kind of end on this. A lot of people know bulk insurance. We're doing commercial truck insurance, liability, and cargo. We also do work comp. There's companies we can do. Well, I'll let you to explain this, but we can bundle it all together. But if you're happy with your current insurance provider, but you want to look into work comp, we can do that separately, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It doesn't have to be all in one. Like you don't have to have all, your truck insurance here and the same with your work comp. You can have those with separate entities.
Absolutely. So we have contracts with 3 of the best trucking workers' comp markets in the country. They also don't write the auto liability.
Yeah.
Right. So we also have motor or trucking insurance companies that will do both. They'll write your auto liability, your property, your GL, and they'll
which
write
typically
your
might be
comp.
better. Not always, but it could be better because you're bundling it all together.
It could be great.
Yeah.
But there's also other times where it makes more sense to separate the workers' comp. Typically, if there's significant premium savings with a workers' comp market that specializes in trucking work comp, right? And you can save a lot of money doing it that way. Also depends on the states. But yeah, workers' comp is not that complicated to turn quotes around. It's actually a lot easier. We don't need that much information, which is nice. You try to get a trucking quote and it seems like we ask you for the moon and back.
Blood samples.
Yeah. Workers' comp's not that way. You can turn a quote around relatively quick. And sometimes there's a lot of premium savings. I'll say this as well. Everybody should be workers' comp should be on everybody's radar. If you don't have it, call us. Let's at least talk about it.
If you're hiring anybody,
if you're hiring anyone, right? Everyone's goal should be to protect your employees as an owner of a company.
Yep.
So if you're hiring anyone, there's also other options. We talk a lot about occupational accident for owner operators. So there's some alternative benefits that maybe don't fall under workers' comp, but that owner operators are provided as well. And so all those conversations are what we're here for. And so I would just say, don't be afraid to, even if you're not calling us, call your insurance agent and let's talk about work comp. Last thing you want is to be in the middle of a lawsuit.
Yeah. We'll talk about if they are interested, next steps on if they want to talk to one of us, what do they need to do?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's lots of ways to get a hold of us. Probably the easiest is when we'll put in a contact us, maybe an email. We've got some sales guys here. If we could reach out to them. Otherwise, you can contact me directly. I'm on the forum occasionally. You'll see my contact info on there. I'll also repost it with this podcast so that everybody can see it and have it. But never be afraid to call me or email me. My email is just larry@bulkinsurancegroup.com. That's probably the best way to get a hold of me. Or you call my cell phone. I have no problem. Everyone's always like, oh, I don't want to get I have no problem. I got people calling me all the time asking one-off questions. And if we're not answering those calls, then what are we doing? So 715-563-4187.
Pulled my back on Monday. I told you about, is there any way I can work? Can I submit it into our?
So I think you're excluded from our work comp policy, actually.
That was at the gym. It wasn't here at work. So, man, Larry, thanks for coming on. I selfishly enjoy these because I've learned. I wanted to have you on because I wanted you to teach me more about work comp because I was still a little foreign on that. And I've seen even in news articles over the years, I think there was a California, but then talking about work comp and classification of owner ops versus company drive. But anyways, there needs to be more clarity on this. And I mean, you hit it home. I think you explained it perfectly.
Well, we could probably do a series of podcasts. It is complex and it is hard to dial it all in. But I think the main message of it is just call your agent, have the conversation, and do what's best for your business.
Yep. Larry Hurt, thanks for coming on.
Thanks.
I don't think we need to rehash what Larry and I talked about, but man, I hope you found that fascinating about workman's comp. Hopefully you got a takeaway from that. Maybe you weren't, maybe you don't have that coverage, or maybe you think you're paying higher premiums in work comp. Work comp is something, like Larry said, that we cover with Bulk Insurance Group, among other trucking coverages, cargo and liability. So if you just have questions, like Larry said, contact us. We won't try to upsell you or sell you insurance, but if you want to know, just have a more clarity on how work comp works or whether your company would need it or not, call us. Larry will walk you through that. And if you are interested, we would be honored and privileged to service you in that side of the business.
Yeah. I know a lot of people too, they might have more questions with insurance, whether it be workers' comp or on another topic. And that's what we're always open to, suggestions on what to have podcasts about, whether we can find an expert who's knowledgeable in the field, or it's one of our own guys who can talk about it. But if you have a topic or something that you want to hear more about, just send us an email, podcast@bulkloads.com, and we'd love to hear it.
Yeah, email us. It's easy. If you're watching this on YouTube, down in the comments section, simply ask a question. We look at those every week. We're extremely appreciative of those. So yeah, give us that kind of that feedback for sure.
Yeah.
And I was going to say this about Larry. I mean, that guy, his heart is in this, and you won't be disappointed if you reach out and talk to him.
Yeah.
So,
awesome.
Well, a couple of things before we close out of here. Our webinar, you've maybe seen some stuff online, an email sent out, but we are hosting a webinar for BulkLoads Plus. If you're still uncertain about what it is or if it can benefit your company, this is a free webinar that you can access. What exactly is a webinar? I think a lot of people may not even know what that is.
Yeah, to dumb it down, it's pretty much just a video that you can log on and watch. There won't be a camera on your end. You don't even have your mic turned on. What it is, it's like a demo session where our BulkLoads Plus team, they'll be going over the software, what it all entails, and they'll cover key discussion points on it. But within the webinar, you can ask questions during it. So if you have something specific to your company or operation, wondering if it's going to work for you for that piece, you can simply ask a question. It can be anonymous. It'll pop up on the screen, and then our guys can cover that. But there won't be any camera or anything like that. You can log on, log off whenever you want. And the webinar will actually, it'll be, once you register, you'll actually get that recording afterwards to go back and watch it whenever you want.
So if you can't watch it live, go ahead and register, and then you can even go back and get access to that.
Just go ahead and register, so we know that you're wanting to join, and then we'll send that webinar to you afterwards if you can't make it.
Would love for you if you can carve out a little time to register and watch or tune into that webinar just to see. I know we're seeing a lot of people that this is saving hours of time and hours of work. There's so many automated processes that we've built into this section that takes a lot of the workflow out of the business. And I know some people are resistant on change, and I get that. I'm that way. But this one is going to be a game changer for your business.
Yeah, and we've got limited seating on this one, and it's filling up pretty quick. So I would go ahead, if you can, just go to bulktms.com, click the webinar tab. All you have to do is register, name, email, stuff like that, and we'll get you a seat.
Yeah. Next month, is it next month is the Joplin Truck Show?
Yep. September.
Guilty by association?
Yep.
Right?
September 21 to the 23rd, right in Joplin. Yeah.
We will be there. And if you are planning to attend, let us know. We will not have a booth, but we will have troops on the ground there. We would love to meet up with you. If you are showing a truck or going to have a truck there, we'd love to come out there, just get a hold of us however you can. Let us know, and we will plan to meet you out there, give you some free merchandise as well.
Exactly. Yeah, and Jared, also we have our next conference that we're starting to plan for, which is next April 2024, bulkfreightconference.com. You can go to that website, put your email in to get notified when tickets go on sale. We're starting to get things going for that. I've had multiple companies reach out, ask if they can go ahead and start seeing sponsorship opportunities. We're working on building that out, and we have a list of people we'll shoot it to. But if you want on that list, just let us know, and we'll get you some information.
It's probably going to sell out, and it's probably going to sell out fast based on the feedback that we've got. So go ahead and register, get your email on there, because if you are on there first, you will be first to receive tickets or contact that. But yeah, I think, we have a cap. We're not for sure on the number, but probably 500. And we've had much more interest than that.
Yeah.
So definitely, and we want to see you there next April. It's going to be awesome. You're going to get so much out of it. You're going to be able to network with people and make business relationships. We're still hearing positive feedback from people that were there this past year and how much it's helped their business. Really just the people that they got to meet more than anything. Yeah,
and we're going to keep bringing it up every podcast episode just because we're going to really try to promote the crap out of it this year, because there's a lot of members that they didn't hear about it last year. Yeah. And they were asking us, hey, we didn't hear about it much. How can we attend next year? So we want to make sure that we get the word out there as much as we can. That way everyone has the opportunity to attend.
Yep. And as always, before we close out of here, if you have a prayer or prayer request, please send them to prayer@bulkloads.com or get a hold of us however you can. We take those very serious. We've had multiple come in, and I'm not going to say names, but a fella with cancer in Montana we're praying for, another person in Nebraska we're praying for with family issues. And again, we take those prayers seriously, and we have a member here at BulkLoads that pray over that, so they don't go unheard at all. Again, if you have a prayer request, even if it's not for you or know somebody else, send them to prayer@bulkloads.com, and we will be praying for them. So, as always, thank you as always for listening to the BulkLoads podcast. If you know of somebody that can benefit from this, please share this episode with them. However you're watching this, we greatly appreciate that and are honored for that. So as always, thank you very much, and God bless.